I was in the crash reports unit for a federal contractor in Washington, D.C. It wasn't the kind of job people imagine when they hear the word aviation. I never went to crash sites. I never touched wreckage. I never met survivors or families. I read transcripts, thousands of hours of cockpit voice recordings, radar timelines, maintenance summaries, and internal memos. My job was to organize, summarize, and cross-reference them for analysts and investigators. I listened to the last moments of flights most people only read about in headlines. After a while, the human brain starts to normalize it. Until it doesn't. This happened in the late 1990s, back when cockpit voice recorders were still recorded on magnetic tape. The audio quality wasn't great. Hiss, distortion, dropouts. You had to listen carefully, sometimes dozens of times, to understand what was being said. One case came across my desk that never went public. Not because it was classified, because there was nothing to release. No crash, no debris field, no confirmed cause, just a disappearance. The flight was a small commuter aircraft, turboprop, operating a late-night route between two cities on the East Coast. Short hop, less than 90 minutes, clear weather, experienced crew. The kind of flight that should never become a mystery. The aircraft departed normally. Radar tracked it climbing to cruising altitude. Voice recorder audio began as expected. Routine checklists, casual conversation between pilots. I remember the first 20 minutes clearly because they were so painfully normal. They talked about scheduling, about a delay earlier in the day, about a restaurant one of them liked near the destination airport. Background noise was steady. No alarms, no stress. Then there was a pause. Not silence, just a break in conversation. The captain exhaled, audible on the tape. "Do you feel that?" he asked. The first officer replied, "Yeah." There was a brief laugh, uncomfortable. "Probably just turbulence," the first officer said. The captain didn't respond. I replayed that section several times when I first heard it. The way the captain didn't answer stuck with me. He didn't agree. He didn't dismiss it. He moved on. A minute later, there was a faint sound beneath the usual cockpit noise, almost like something rubbing or dragging intermittently. It wasn't loud enough to trigger alarms, but it was there. The captain mentioned a vibration. The first officer confirmed he felt it too. They checked instruments. Everything read normal. The vibration continued. Their tone changed subtly. Not panic. Focus. They discussed whether to inform air traffic control. Decided to monitor it first. This wasn't unusual. Pilots are trained not to overreact. The tape jumped ahead slightly due to a recording gap. When audio resumed, the atmosphere had shifted. The first officer's voice was tighter now. "I don't like this," he said. The captain asked for specific readings. They went through systems methodically. Engine parameters normal. Control inputs responsive. No warnings. And yet the vibration was getting worse. You could hear it clearly on the tape now. A low, irregular thudding like something loose hitting a surface repeatedly. The captain made the decision to descend slightly to see if conditions changed. They notified ATC. Requested a lower altitude. Clearance was granted. As they descended, the vibration changed pitch. That's when the captain said something I still hear in my head sometimes. "This doesn't feel aerodynamic." The first officer asked what he meant. "I don't know," the captain said. "It feels mechanical, but not engine." They fell silent again. Then the first officer spoke quietly. "Look at that." The captain asked what he was seeing. There was a pause. "I don't think that's supposed to move." The tape didn't capture what he was looking at. No camera footage existed. Only sound. The captain told him to keep flying, not to fixate. The vibration became violent suddenly. A series of sharp bangs echoed through the cockpit audio, loud enough to distort the recording. The first officer swore. The captain took control. Alarms began sounding, not one but several, overlapping. They declared an emergency. Their voices were still controlled, but the pace increased. Checklists were abandoned. They focused on keeping the aircraft stable. Radar data shows the plane deviated slightly from its course at this point. Not a sharp turn, more like a drift. The captain mentioned control resistance. The first officer confirmed. Then came the moment that ended the recording. The captain shouted, "That's not." The audio cut off abruptly. No scream. No impact noise. No explosion. Just silence. Radar lost the aircraft seconds later. Search efforts began immediately. Air and sea. Hundreds of square miles covered. Sonar scans. Debris recovery. Nothing. No wreckage. No oil slick. No floating debris. The official explanation was structural failure at altitude, leading to a rapid breakup and sinking. The ocean in that area was deep. Recovery was deemed impossible. Case closed. Except it wasn't. When I compared the cockpit audio to similar cases, something stood out. In every confirmed mid-air breakup or catastrophic failure, the recording ends violently. Sudden noise. Shouting. Chaos. This one didn't. It ended mid-sentence. As if the power was cut. As if the recorder itself was disabled before impact. That shouldn't happen unless something very specific occurs. I flagged this discrepancy in my summary. I was told to remove it. Not rewrite it. Remove it. That was the first time in my career I'd been directly instructed to delete an observation. I kept a copy. Years later, I ran into an investigator I'd worked with on unrelated cases. We were both older by then. Less careful with our words. I asked him about that flight. His expression changed immediately. He asked if I still had access to the audio. I told him no. He leaned in and lowered his voice. They think the structure didn't fail, he said. What then? I asked. He hesitated. Something interfered with the control system, he said. Not from outside. From inside the aircraft. I asked what that meant. He shook his head. They never figured it out. To this day, that flight remains listed as lost with cause undetermined. No families ever got a full explanation. No report ever mentioned the final words on that tape. Sometimes, when I'm on a plane and feel a vibration that doesn't match turbulence, I think about that captain. About how calm he sounded. About how the last thing he said wasn't fear. It was confusion. And how sometimes whatever goes wrong up there doesn't announce itself loudly enough for anyone to understand before it's already over. I was on the overnight cargo-to-passenger conversion flight that almost nobody remembers because it didn't end in a fireball. There were no dramatic photos, no endless news coverage, no memorials. The airline quietly refunded tickets, issued a carefully worded statement, and moved on. I didn't. This happened in the early 2000s on a late-night flight from the West Coast to the Midwest. The airline had recently started using an older aircraft model for budget routes. Planes that had spent years hauling freight before being refitted with passenger seats. They were legal, certified, cleared by regulators. I booked the flight because it was the last one out and half the price of the others. It was just after midnight when I boarded. The terminal was nearly empty, that strange limbo hour where the airport feels abandoned but not closed. The gate agent looked exhausted. The boarding announcement echoed too loudly in the quiet space. The plane looked tired. That's the only word that fits. The paint was clean but faded. The interior lights flickered slightly as people stepped inside. The overhead bins creaked when opened, like they hadn't been used gently in a long time. I took a window seat near the back. There were maybe 40 passengers total. Plenty of empty rows. No families. Mostly solo travelers, a couple of students, one older man in a military jacket. The cabin felt hollow. We pushed back late. No explanation given. Engine started with a rough, uneven whine that made a few people glance up. The flight attendant smiled too hard, too deliberately. Taxiing felt normal at first, but I noticed how long we waited before takeoff clearance. The plane idled at the end of the runway longer than usual, engines humming, vibrations passing through the floor. I remember thinking they were troubleshooting something. Finally we rolled. The takeoff was aggressive, almost rushed. The plane lifted sharply, climbing faster than I was used to. My stomach dropped. A few people gripped armrests. Then we leveled out slightly and continued climbing. No applause. No laughter. Just quiet. The seatbelt sign stayed on longer than normal. The cabin lights dimmed fully. Outside, the city lights vanished into darkness. About 20 minutes in, I felt it. A deep, low vibration beneath my feet. Not turbulence. Turbulence comes and goes. It stayed. It felt like standing over heavy machinery in another room. I shifted in my seat, pressed my feet harder into the floor. The vibration intensified briefly, then settled. I looked around. A woman across the aisle frowned, adjusting her seatbelt. The older man in the military jacket stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. The flight attendants hadn't started service. That was unusual. The captain made an announcement, his voice calm but slightly rushed. He mentioned routine system checks and asked everyone to remain seated a bit longer. Routine. That word again. The vibration returned, stronger now, accompanied by a faint rattling sound from somewhere behind the cabin walls. Like loose metal tapping rhythmically. Someone coughed nervously. I pressed the call button. It took longer than it should have. When a flight attendant finally came, I asked if everything was okay. I tried to sound casual, like I wasn't scared. She smiled, but her eyes didn't soften. Everything's fine, she said. Just an older plane. They make more noise. She didn't wait for a response before moving on. That answer didn't help. The smell started shortly after. Hot air. Really. Like overheated electronics. It wasn't strong, but it was distinct. People noticed this time. Heads turned. Someone whispered. A man too rose up, leaned into the aisle, sniffing. The vibration deepened, turning uneven as if something was rotating out of balance. Then the plane lurched. Not a drop. A sideways shift. The cabin tilted slightly, then corrected. The seatbelt sign chimed again. Still no announcement. I could hear something else now. A distant thumping, irregular, not synced with the engines. Every few seconds it came back like something striking from inside the fuselage. The lights flickered. Just once. The captain finally spoke again. This time he didn't use the word routine. He said they were experiencing an unexpected mechanical condition and would be adjusting altitude. He asked us to remain calm. He didn't say how serious it was. We began descending. The vibration changed character again, sharper, harsher. The thumping became louder, closer. It sounded like it was directly beneath the cabin floor. The older man in the military jacket stood up despite the seatbelt sign. A flight attendant rushed over, insisting he sit down. He did, but his face was pale now. "I've heard that sound before," he muttered. I don't think he realized he said it out loud. "What sound?" the attendant asked. He didn't answer. The plane shuddered violently, a sudden, brutal jolt that sent a ripple of screams through the cabin. Overhead bins rattled. One popped open, spilling a backpack into the aisle. The engine surged, then one dropped in pitch noticeably. The plane yawed hard to the right. People screamed now. The captain shouted over the intercom, not an announcement, just his voice cutting in mid-sentence, telling everyone to brace. No explanation, just brace. I bent forward, arms crossed, head down. My heart felt like it was trying to punch its way out of my chest. The vibration turned into something else entirely. A tearing sensation. Metal screaming. A deep, structural groan that I felt in my bones more than heard. We were losing altitude fast. The impact came in stages. First, a crushing slam that snapped my head forward. Then a second, harder hit that threw me sideways against the window. Then a long, grinding drag as the plane scraped across something solid. The noise was indescribable, metal ripping, glass shattering, people screaming. Then it stopped. Suddenly. Too suddenly. Silence followed, broken only by sobbing and the hiss of damaged systems. I lifted my head slowly. The cabin was tilted at an unnatural angle. One side of the plane had collapsed inward. Rows of seats were twisted, some torn free from the floor. The smell of fuel filled the air. We hadn't hit a runway. We'd come down in an open field, miles short of the diversion airport. The landing gear had failed completely. The belly of the plane had taken the impact. Fire crews arrived faster than I expected. That part feels unreal now, like it happened to someone else. I survived with injuries I still feel when the weather changes. Others didn't survive at all. The official investigation concluded that the aircraft suffered a catastrophic failure related to fatigue cracks and structural components. Damage that had accumulated over years of cargo service and wasn't detected during conversion. They called it an extremely rare alignment of factors. They didn't call it negligence. The airline quietly retired the rest of that model. No one talks about that flight anymore. But sometimes when I board a plane late at night and feel that low vibration under my feet, I think about how close we came to vanishing completely. No black box mystery. No unanswered questions. I wasn't supposed to be on that flight. My schedule had me leaving the next morning, but a last-minute change bumped me onto a late-night regional jet from Denver to Kansas City. At first, I didn't mind. I was tired, annoyed, and mostly just wanted to get home. The airport was almost empty. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly over half-filled gates. Only a handful of people waited at my gate. No families, no kids, just quiet, solitary travelers. That should have been my first warning. The aircraft itself looked worn. It had been converted from cargo, and the seats and overhead bins showed every scrape and dent from years of use. I settled into a window seat near the wing. I like watching the ground disappear during takeoff, but tonight the world outside looked too still, too sterile. The engines roared to life with a low, uneven hum as we pushed back. I noticed a subtle vibration under my feet, irregular but noticeable. Nothing in the safety cards mentioned vibrations that didn't come from turbulence. Takeoff was abrupt. The plane climbed sharply, wing flexing unnaturally. I pressed my seatbelt tighter, trying to ignore the growing unease. Once at cruising altitude, the vibration persisted. It wasn't turbulence. It was something else. A low, almost mechanical pulse under the floor. Faint rattling sounds echoed from overhead bins and walls. The flight attendants remained seated, glancing at each other with eyes that betrayed their concern despite their forced smiles. 15 minutes into the flight, a faint, warm, oily smell began filling the cabin. It wasn't strong but distinct enough to make me notice. Some passengers whispered quietly, trying to reassure themselves. Then came the announcement. The captain's voice was calm but clipped. "We are experiencing minor instrument discrepancies. We will maintain a slightly lower altitude as a precaution. Please remain seated." Precaution. The word felt heavy. The plane seemed to pulse beneath me and the vibration intensified. I gripped the armrest, trying to ground myself. The flight attendants eventually stood, moving with deliberate slowness down the aisle, checking passengers without speaking. The vibration became sharper, a metallic thump that traveled through the floor in uneven pulses. The engines hummed differently now, irregular and unpredictable. The captain returned over the intercom, more serious this time. "We are diverting to a nearby airport. Remain calm and seated." As we began descending, the outside world darkened. The horizon tilted unnaturally through my window. The vibration turned into a harsh, tearing groan of metal. The plane lurched violently to one side. People screamed. The lights flickered. The overhead bins rattled and popped open slightly. A flight attendant shouted instructions over the chaos, telling everyone to brace. I leaned forward, pressing my arms and head against my seat, trying to steady my breathing. The vibration escalated into full structural groaning, metal bending and twisting with a sound that resonated in my chest. The impact came in stages. First, a jolt that knocked me forward. Then another that threw me sideways. The plane scraped across uneven ground, tearing the fuselage. The world outside became an indistinct blur of night, dirt, and debris. Emergency lights illuminated twisted seats and frightened faces. Smoke filled the cabin faintly. Someone cried. Someone else whispered prayers. We had landed far short of the airport. No smooth runway. Just dirt, brush, and twisted metal. I survived, broken but alive. Others weren't so lucky. The investigation blamed a cascading mechanical failure triggered by sensor malfunctions. Pilots compensated for faulty readings, unknowingly stressing structural components to their limits. Official reports called it a highly unlikely alignment of failures. What the report didn't capture was the long warning. The irregular vibrations, the faint smells, the subtle metallic groans, all of which screamed that something was wrong long before the descent began. I still fly. But now I notice the small things. The hum under my feet, the pitch of the engines, the tension in a flight attendant's posture. The worst flights aren't the dramatic ones with storms and explosions. They're the quiet ones where the danger creeps in slowly, almost unnoticed until it's too late.